Welcome to the Shameless Podcast, where I help Christian men kill shame, stand strong, and live on mission. I'm your host, Ken Freire, and I'm bringing you real stories, practical insights, and biblical truths that equip you to break free from your sin, shame, and live a life of purpose. Let's step out of the shadows together and into the light of Christ. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. And today I have with me Anthony, hold on a sec. How do you say your last name? Curnutt?
Kernut. Yep, just like it's spelled. Kernut.
Kernut, okay. Let me start that over again.
Yes.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Shameless Podcast. I'm super excited. Today, I have Anthony Curnutt with me. He is the leader of Real Men Ministries and the host of Real Men Talk podcast, and he is an advocate for biblical masculinity. And what I love about the conversation we're going to have today is just a fight for marriage and how Anthony almost lost his marriage, but how he redeemed it and how God redeemed it, healed him to be able to fight for it because of all the addiction that he struggled with. So Anthony, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm wonderful. Ken, thank you so much for allowing me, for the invite, for all of this. I love what you're doing. I love this ministry, and I am excited for this conversation.
Yeah, dude, I remember our first conversation. You and I were just kept going on and on because we were like just kind of fired up. We have very kindred spirits. We want to see men to live out their God-given purpose and their calling. So it's fun, man.
Yes, absolutely.
But for those people who don't know you, right? And lots of times we come into podcasts, it can be a little bit more professional and stuff like that. But we want to get to know the real Anthony. So tell us something just like either weird or silly about Anthony that most people wouldn't know from just listening to the podcast content that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit of a nerd, right?
All
I
right.
love Lord of the Rings. I love Harry Potter. I love, I play video games, and which is kind of odd because nobody ever gets to see that side of me. You know what I mean? And but yeah, it's just one of those things that I enjoy doing.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Okay, so when you say you're like a nerd, like how deep nerddom do you go down this rabbit hole? Is it like you've read all the books, movies, like you got like your own like shrine at home, or
No, not that deep. I would be, but I've definitely seen all the movies. I watch them all the time. But as a matter of fact, my wife gets on to me every time me and the kids will sit down. We'll have a Harry Potter marathon or a Lord of the Rings marathon. I've seen them all like 100 times, but I've not read the books. A lot of people would say that, I'm not really a fan, whatever. But anyways, I still love it, right? Play some Call of Duty, those types of things. But no shrines, nothing like that. I've got little kids, so they tear up everything, right? And so, yeah, I don't even bother with any of that stuff. But yeah, I used to be something real funny. I used to be a video game collector. I had all the systems, right? And then we started having kids, and I was like, okay, it's time to get rid of all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I've always been kind of
because they'll break it anyways. At some point, they'll find they're like, oh, what's this cartridge thing? Well, they wouldn't even know what it's called, right? But they're like, what is this?
Yeah, let's spit in it, or throw it in the toilet, or something.
Dude, I have I have 4 kids, and I have like my babies, right? Every year for the last 8 years, they would grab my phone and they're just trying to like chew on it, like I don't know, like right. And it's like, dude, I don't need your saliva all over the microphone.
That's right.
I could see them doing that with a cartridge.
Yes, 100%.
Cool, man. Okay, so Anthony, you're a big fan. It sounds like every quarter you're doing some sort of marathon in your house. So I'll make sure to hit you up whenever I need a marathon buddy.
All right. Yes.
Well, Anthony, man, today we're going to talk about this topic about fighting for your marriage and how you had almost lost your marriage, right? So walk us through like what were the struggles you faced early on with addiction and how did that impact your life and marriage?
Yeah. And so really it stems back from me being very young, right? So I become addicted to pornography when I was 5 years old. And because of that, I had a very skewed view of women, right? Even though I was kind of raised in church, right? For the most part, I'd never learned the importance of my parents are still, so I come from a broken home. I'm adopted by my dad, but they got married whenever I was, I don't know, 6 or 7. They've been married for 30 something years now. Right. And so I've seen what that type of marriage looks like, but I didn't understand what it took, right? And because of my addiction to pornography, it really just skewed my view of even my wife. Even we were married for, I don't know, 6, 7 years before everything kind of expired, and I almost lost my marriage. And I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? And a lot of prayer, a lot of stuff like that. But that addiction to pornography, it's so took me over. I mean, anybody who's ever dealt with, really, it's not any different than any other addiction, right? It's on your mind all the time. You just can't seem to get past it. Can't seem to get away from it. You're constantly hiding. So then comes shame, then comes guilt, then comes all those things, which do not play a very good part inside marriage, right? And not having a complete understanding of what a biblical marriage in and of myself, for myself, was supposed to look like. It was just something that I had tucked off to the side. I thought was okay. Well, I mean, I knew it was wrong. I knew my addiction to pornography was wrong, but I just thought it was going to be okay, right? As long as I kept everything hidden, I would never have to worry about it. And you cannot have a thriving marriage with secrets. You can't. It doesn't work that way. Eventually, those secrets, just like the Bible says, your sins will find you out. Or light will shine on the sins, and that's exactly what had happened.
Yeah. So what did happen? For 6 years you were hiding it. It was always maybe on your phone or different things like that. But you did a decent job at hiding it. But then 6 years later, it came out. What happened?
Yeah. So and really, it's weird. So this is pre like phone days, right? Because I'm that old, and my wife and I, we've been married for 21 years now, and so we had been married for about 6 years, and it was weird because I really thought that I was kind of over it, right? But what had happened was we didn't have a computer in the house for a long time, and we had got this computer and stuff, and instantly, that addiction just snatched me up. And I had been viewing it, when the kids went to bed, when she went to bed, I'd find excuses to be on the computer all the time, and stuff like that. And we one day I forgot to delete my history, and she got on there and she found it, and it was devastating. It just crushed her, and that was a real eye opener, right? That type of guilt and that type of shame being exposed. One, it was so hard for her. She didn't. She can't understand, right, what it is for a man to deal with pornography. Not that I am in any means being an advocate for it, right? And we'll discuss that in further detail later on in the podcast. But the struggle that is there, I might as well have just cheated on her.
Yeah.
In her mind, I completely destroyed her trust. On top of lying to her, hiding things from her, all of that stuff coming out all at the same time, and it rocked her to the point that, I mean, we almost ended up in divorce. And it was a terrifying moment for me because it's something that I never wanted. I had experienced divorce. My mother was divorced. I come from a broken home, even though my parents, now that once they got married, they've been married for a long time. But I never wanted my kids to experience divorce, right? I never wanted them to, and this is my wife and I, we were in ministry. We were, we were living a life. We were in church. We were doing all these things, and nobody knew about it, right? No, nobody did until they did. And all of that hiding, all of that stuff, it was remembering the look on her face, right, when she discovered that I was lying to her and that I had been viewing this pornography and stuff. It haunts me even to this day,
Hmm.
right? And we're talking, almost 20 something, 20 years later, 15 years later. And I never want her to experience that again, right? Not only do I not want to experience, I don't want her to experience that again, right? Um, that the person that's supposed to love her, the person that's supposed to protect her, the person that's supposed to look after her and guide her spiritually and is a, I don't necessarily want to say a complete failure. That's not true, but completely crushed that trust that's supposed to be there, right?
To her, it felt like a betrayal.
Right, exactly, and that's exactly what I had done. Is I had betrayed her, and man, there was a lot of healing that had to take place from that, and all that stuff. But it was very difficult for a while,
Yeah.
even for several years.
Yeah. So let's talk about, let's backpedal a little bit. You said that like you knew you always wanted to not have a broken marriage. You didn't want your kids to come up in a divorced family. Like that was something ingrained in you,
Right,
right? But yet you still struggled with this sin, sexual sin. How did you like compartmentalize those two thoughts in your mind of like, I'm going to go fall into sexual sin and I want to have a healthy, thriving marriage?
right. Well, first off, I didn't view it as a sexual sin. Right,
Hmm.
my view of sex was so distorted. Right, it was so distorted. I mean, I knew it was a sin, right? And obviously it's a sexual sin, but I never like that was not my thought process,
Yeah.
right? That it was a sexual sin. It you know, I just knew that I needed that, right? And really it has a lot to do with things that had happened in my past, my need for affirmation, all these different things. My own insecurities were coming out in all of this, right? None of this stuff that I knew, I didn't know this at the time, right?
Yeah.
This is not something that was in my thought process. Looking back and going through the healing process, I realized what had stemmed the addiction in the first place at 5 years old, right? And we'll leave that to the imaginations. The things that had happened to me at a young age that would cause you to go into something like that. I didn't even put the two together. Right? And growing in that addiction and not understanding that, yes, I understood that I needed to stop. I did not view it as big of a deal as she did, right? Which is part of the problem, right? At the time, I didn't. Okay, so yes, obviously, I'm hiding this from her, but I didn't. It's just it's something most everybody does, right? I mean, we're dudes. That's how we're geared, right? We're geared towards visual, sexualization,
Stimulation. Yeah.
those types of things. That process did not. I mean, it didn't. I didn't go through that process until afterwards, right?
Yeah.
But it is what had happened as a result of my addiction for such a long time.
Yeah. In a previous episode, I interviewed one of my pastors when I lived in Minnesota. And we talked about the 5 lies that most, people believe who are addicted to pornography. And one of them was like the one that you mentioned, like, it's okay. I'm not hurting anyone.
Mhm.
Right. This is fine. Like, it's just me. I can handle this. I can manage it. But like, this doesn't really affect it. But it did. Right. Like it actually does. And it's a lie. Right. Because it does. It affects who you are
That's
as a
right.
person and how you show yourself to your wife, right. To the
Mhm.
people around you. So it's one of those crazy lies that we think about. As the lie came to fruition and
Mhm.
uncovered, and now all of a sudden your wife is like, I don't want anything to do with you.
Mhm.
And you saw the reality of divorce being there and losing, the perfect image, quote unquote perfect, right? We know kids are chaos, right? But like
Right.
this image of an intact family, that was a turning point for you to say, I got to go deal with this. And you said something fascinating. You were like, hey, I need to start going through the healing process of, all these things. What were some of the healing things that came about that you're like, I need to be healed of this, or I need to work through these items to truly
Right.
see healing in addiction?
Yeah. Well, first off, there was this process of rebuilding trust, right? that I understood that was the first thing that needed to happen. So we began to go through that process. We set lots and lots and lots of boundaries. I was 26 at the time when this happened. I'm now 42. Even to this day, right? My wife has every password on my phone, every password to every email. And it's not even that she doesn't trust me anymore. This is the accountability boundaries that I have put in place, right? To make sure that trust is always intact and keeps me accountable, right? The second thing that I did is I found me accountability partner outside of my wife, right? A man, a godly man that I could turn to, right? That could mentor me, that could push me to be better, right? You could say they were my Paul to me being the Timothy, right? That they were, hey, listen, this has come to light. This is what I'm dealing with. I do not want to lose my marriage. This is the most important thing that I have in my life, right? Outside of Jesus Christ, I need to fix this. I need help. Right.
Yeah.
And so talking those things out, things that had happened in the past, things that I had done, right? All these different things. And through that, a lot of healing took place. Counseling that she and I went through, marriage, basically marriage counseling, right? It wasn't really marriage counseling then. It was just people in the church that we went to, but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we're in this spot. We understand that God has brought us together and we want to save this. We need help, right? She needs help to heal from what I've done. I need help to heal from my past, and I need help to be accountable to her, right? And so the process of this healing, and it was painful, right? Some of the stuff is still painful to talk about at times, right? But it's necessary, right? It is. It's not fun. It's not anything, but it is necessary for us to do if we're going to be leaders. If we expect the people around us to heal, and we do, then we have to heal also. And if we continue to suppress, if we continue to hide, if we continue to push everything underneath that mental block, just act like it's not there, nothing ever gets done. And it's like an open wound that just festers over time. And that is what had happened to me. And when all of it come out, I went through this series of, well, I feel guilt, I feel shame. Nah, it's not my fault. Trying to reject, accountability, all these things. And finally, when I just broke it all down, and I was just like, Jesus, here, like I can't do this anymore. I can't hang on to this. I can't deal with the shame. I can't deal with it. You are the only person, right? You're the only way I'm going to be able to truly heal. And this was a lot through guidance, right? This was a lot through uncovering this. This was a process of happening, right? Because even after that, it's not like the addiction just was gone, right? It didn't work that way. It's not like the Lord was like, oh, okay, the addiction was gone. No, I had to work through that, right? And I even failed again, right? Now it was different because I didn't hide it. I didn't, all those different things. I didn't, all that stuff. I learned from my mistakes, but taking accountability for it was huge. In my own mental health, it was huge.
Yeah. What were, as you think about the relapse, right? You relapsed, you started to take ownership and you found healing. Talk to me a little bit more about the actual things you had to be healed from,
Okay.
right? Because you were like, hey, I had to be healed from several things to
Right.
finally be redeemed from it. Because you were trying to repent, you were trying to do all this, but there was baggage and stuff that happened to you. So what were some of those things that kind of got uncovered while you were going through the process?
Right. Well, things that had happened to me as a child, even sexual abuse and different things like that had happened that I didn't know at a very young age, right? That I didn't even know that was still affecting me. When all those things begin to come out, when all those things begin to, nobody in my life even knew about them. And so when all those things begin to come out and they begin to, having to be healed from those things that I didn't even know, again, that I needed to be healed from, that had haunt me. They were just wounds that were just, again, I go back to the festering, right? They were just there, and they were so painful once we started to uncover them, and I was like, man, on top of not understanding what biblical sex looked like, right? I go back to, my view of sex was so dirty. It was so dirty because of my addiction. I did not understand what biblical sex looked like. I didn't understand that sex was created by God. It was ordained. It was meant for something good. All my life, I'd always heard that, you just hear, if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, it was just, sex is bad, right? You just don't have sex. You just stay away from it. Well, why? Because we said so, because the Bible says so, right? Sex is
Yeah.
bad. And so you
It
just
was
stay
put in the
away.
sin category.
Yes,
Anything outside of sex, bad. You're like, wait, what?
exactly. So 15 years old, I'm like, you guys are a bunch of idiots, right? Sex is phenomenal. I don't understand why you guys are telling me this, right? So I'm discovering, I started having sex when I was 15 years old, and I like that. It just permeated from there, right? Like my view of sex, because I was never taught biblical sex, right? I was only taught that sex was bad. Well, that's not true, right? Sex is not bad. Sex is good. It was created by God. Sex in the confines of marriage is in its perfected state, right? And through that, it is so glorious. It is a view of worship, right? Now, this is a long time coming, right? To get to that point, it took a long time to get there, because I had to slowly learn, okay, so what I did was wrong, right? My addiction is wrong, but what God has created is not wrong,
Yeah.
right? I thought they were both the same thing. So, I was just using my wife just to get off. I mean, for me, it was no different than pornography. It was no different than my addiction. It was just me self gratifying myself, right? And you want to talk about a painful experience. When I come to the realization that that is what I was doing, right? I was so ashamed. I could not. I was so disappointed in myself, right? And I can sit around and I can say that, well, nobody ever taught me. And to where that may be true, I pretty much grew up in the church. Nobody ever told me that sex was ordained and created by God for a good thing. Nobody ever told me that you don't have sex outside of marriage because it takes it out of its purpose. The only thing I was ever told was sex was bad. And I could do that. But we're men. We take responsibility for our own actions. That's what a man does. And so to have to sit down and be like, man, have to come in and have that conversation with your wife. I'm sorry. I didn't. And this is years after, even after that, right? And I'm going, man, I have failed yet again, just in a different way, right? And so healing from all of this stuff, it was most definitely a process. It was not a fun process. And you just continually learn, right? And here's the thing. I'm sorry. In the society in which we live, pornography is so viewed as normal.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. It's in every movie you see. It's in every, you walk into the grocery store, and it may not be full on pornography, but yoga pants and everything else that makes a man's mind just run wild, right? This is something even today, and we're talking, 15 years ago. This is something even today that I have to keep under the blood consistently. This is my cross that I have to bear every day. I have to make a conscious decision. This will not be the day that I fail, right?
Yeah.
I will not do this again, because I love Jesus, because I love my wife. And that is an intentional thing that we have to do.
Yeah. And that's huge, man, because I want to talk about that here a little bit more, because what I have found many times, people are like, oh, I've been healed. Like, it's one of those things we feel like, oh, once I'm healed, I'm done. I
Right.
can move on to something. But like you said, number one, the healing process took a while, right? It took
Mhm.
years. And even as you've dealt with the initial blow of it, right? Then it's like, oh my gosh, I found that I was just using my wife to get off. And then it's like later on, you're like, man, I'm not being a good enough husband. And I get it. I've been there too, man, where I felt like, gosh, God, I know I should be better and I can't do this.
Right.
But we thank the grace of God that he continually sanctifies us and showing us how
Yes.
we could be better. Right. But it's still an ongoing battle. So talk to us about guys who feel like they're stuck and they're struggling right now. And they're like, man, I've been trying so much to put this under the blood of Jesus, but it's been really difficult. And I just keep falling and I'm in this cycle of shame and sin. How do I get out of it? And what can I start doing to really see victory?
Right. That's the most important question, right? And let me tell you something. One of the most important things that you could do is surround yourself with godly men. Right? There are things, I have to be careful the way I say it because sometimes it comes out wrong. There are things that other men can relate better with you than your wife can. Right? Now,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about hiding, right? I'm not talking about hiding things from your wife or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But men understand the struggle, right? And so to surround yourself with godly men, now that word is important. Godly men. You need spiritual leaders in your life, right? You are called to be a spiritual leader. You need a spiritual leader. Every football player needs a coach, right?
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes and all these people, they have quarterback coaches, right? They don't play the game. They teach them to be better. We as men, we need Pauls in our life, right? We need people in our life that we can come to and be like, hey, I am struggling. Or hey, when they see us struggling and we're not saying anything, they come over and kick us in the seat of the pants, right? Hey, you're not on the right path. And I'm telling you right now, if you continue going down this path, it is a path of death. You've got to turn around from this, right? So the people that we surround ourselves is huge. It is a tool in our arsenal that God has given us intentionally, right? He has intentionally surrounded us with other people to help us go long. I heard a guy one time say, if you want to go somewhere fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go far, you take people with you. And that's true even in our spirituality. If you want to grow as a spiritual leader, you have to surround yourself with people who will push you, who will help you, who are going to spiritually guide you in the right direction. That is part of one of the most important things that you could do, right? Two, you have to break down walls, right? Healing, God can only heal what you allow him to heal.
Yeah.
Okay. For example, all the things that had happened in my past, I didn't even realize that they were affecting me. I had never prayed for them. I had never did, I mean, obviously I had remembered them, but I just acted like they didn't exist, right? I built these walls up around them that kept everybody, including God, out. Right. And it wasn't until I realized that I had those walls and I had to give this to Jesus. I had to let those walls down. That vulnerability is so difficult, right? It sucks, right? It's hard. It's scary. You don't really know, right? And so you have to get to a place where you're like, Jesus, I trust you with this, right? Because that's really what it boils down to. I trust you with this. I heard a guy. I was just talking to a guy the other day. I've been mentoring and stuff. He's like, I trust God. He's like, but in this area, I kind of want to hang on to. I'm like, so you're telling me you don't trust him in that area? And he's,
Yeah.
why do you have to say it like that? I'm like, because that's what that is.
Yeah.
I'm not going to beat around the bush, but it's true. We're like, okay, God, I want you to I want to be a good leader. I want to do all this. You can just have reign on my life, except for this. I don't keep these walls up. I want to, we're just going to act like this doesn't exist. And God's like, are you sure? I mean, he's a gentleman, right? He's not going to force you to do it, but he highly encourages you to do it, right? And until we let him in, there cannot be true healing, right? Until we let those walls down and be like, hey, and don't get me wrong, this is not an overnight process. I only know this because of 15 years of failing to do so, right? Of learning, okay, yes, fine. I will let these walls down. You can have it. Just leave me. You know what I mean? I'm tired of dealing with it. And it is through that process that I have learned that every single one of us is wounded in some form or fashion, right? Every one of us experience wounds because we live in a broken world, right? We are broken people married to broken people in a broken world, right? Every one of us come with baggage into our marriage. Every one of us come with wounds. None of us gets out of this world unscathed. That's not the way it works. All wounds operate the same, right? They may look different. Some wounds are bigger than others, right? Some experiences are worse than others, but the healing process is the same. Our trust in Jesus, and this is crucial, our trust in Jesus has to overcome the fear of us being vulnerable to ourselves.
Yeah.
It has to be.
100%,
And
man. And
yeah.
let me just add on to that real quick, because I think what's really important when people hear trust in Jesus, right? I think what they're afraid of is like, well, if I trust Jesus with this, will he reject me? Will he not accept me for this thing? And the truth is that, like, he died for you when you were your worst,
That's
before
right.
this even happened. Like, that's when he died. So he's like, he already knows that you have this. He wants you to bring it to him so that he can show you how he's already accepted you,
That's right.
regardless of this sin or regardless of the wound that you have. And
Mm.
so for those people who are going through that, I just want to remind them, like, listen, God knows. And you
That's
and I
right.
both have a similar story of abuse. And I remember having to take those walls down and bringing them to the feet of Jesus and be like, God, I'm afraid you're going to reject me. I'm afraid that people are going to reject me and not accept me for
Mm-hmm.
who I am. I need your help. Will you please help me? And just like, I remember bawling, like it was like that nasty
Oh, I did
bawling,
too.
like the snot,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
but just
100%.
giving it to Jesus, it was immensely helpful.
Yeah. Well, and the reason why we do that is because we project our insecurities that are brought onto us from other people onto the
Yeah.
Lord, right? So
Yeah.
if we've experienced rejection from other people, we automatically put that on God every single time, right?
Yep.
But he's not human, right? He's God. He loves us. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, right?
Yeah.
He knew why he was hanging on the cross that, 2,000 years later, you were going to screw up, right? He knew that.
Yeah.
He already did, right? And so having to remove and really what it is we end up with these insecurities, right? And so because we are insecure in of ourselves, we don't want to risk the chance of getting hurt, right? Because we've been hurt by other people, because we have trust issues, because we have all these things, and we project those onto God. God's like, I'm not, I'm not those people, right?
Yeah.
I'm not. I promise you can trust me with it. But the thing is that we have to willingly give it to him, because if we don't, right, sin is a heart issue. So if we don't give it to him, our hearts never really change. He could force us to give it over, but your heart doesn't change, right? But when we willingly give ourselves over, we are willingly giving our heart over to Jesus also. You're giving all of you over. And in that process, Jesus can heal our hearts, right? Heard a quote the other day. I wish I could remember who said it, and I'm paraphrasing, but someone who's forced to do something is still of the same mind, right?
Yeah.
If you're forced to do something, your mind doesn't change about the way that you wanted to do it, right? If I wanted a steak for dinner, that's what I wanted, and you gave me fried chicken, forced me to eat fried chicken, I still wanted that steak, right? And
You're still
that's
going to
just
be
a
thinking about
humorous.
the steak. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still going to be thinking about the steak. That's right, and that's just a humorous way of putting it, but it's true, right? And so Jesus wants us to be wholly healed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I say holy, that's not HOLLY, that's WHOLEY, right? Holy. He wants all of us, our whole being healed, right? Our mind, our hearts, our spirit, our beings, right? He wants true healing, and only he can offer that.
Yeah. And I love that, man, that just the way you explained it, like, hey, he wants all of us to be healed. And he could force it, but no one ever changes their mind or heart by being forced, right?
No,
They
no, I
need to
don't.
be wooed. And I love how God's grace woos us,
Yes,
right? Where he's like,
yes.
hey, I'm going to show you how amazing, how loving, how beautiful, and how kindness. Like, I love how I think Romans 2 says it, where it's his kindness that brings us to repentance,
Hmm.
right? It's not his judgment. It's not his wrath. It's not the fear. It's his kindness. It's like, we know that God is going to be holy and just, but his kindness and patience to us, that when we deserved wrath, he actually gave us love. That's what
Right.
brings us to repentance, man.
Amen.
And I love that, dude. As we wrap up, Anthony, I know that there are a lot of people who are listening to this and they might be thinking to themselves like, man, Anthony's just dropping truth bombs left and right? And just reminding us that like it is a process. It is something that takes time. But your story has been beautiful in the sense that, man, you didn't get divorced, right? You still have a healthy marriage. You have healthy kids. Now you're helping men, with overcoming this addiction and at the same time just becoming masculine men, living out within their God-given design and calling. So
Hmm.
tell us a little bit more as we wrap up of what do you do now and how are you helping men?
Yeah, so I still surround myself with godly men, right? I heard somebody say the other day, well, I said the other day, it's been a while back now, but if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah.
Spiritually is the same way. You know, every one of us, and I preach this all the time on the podcast, it's in the book, it's in everything. Everybody needs three people in their lives. And this is crucial to our success as men. Every one of us needs a Paul, right? We need a spiritual leader. We need somebody who's going to kick us in the seat of the pants, who's going to guide us, who's going to spiritually set us on that path, right? Every one of us need a Timothy, somebody that we are pouring into, somebody that keeps us accountable, right? We need to be in good standing because we need to help this person be in good standing, right? I want to be the best that I can be for this person that I'm bringing up, right? Because the goal is that the Timothy will surpass you, right? That he
Yeah.
becomes somebody's Paul. And then you need a Barnabas, right? You need somebody who is a true friend, who's not afraid to speak truth to you. He's not somebody that comes alongside you, that is willing to fight with you, that is going to go in ministry with you, that all these people. And obviously, those positions change over time. Again, hopefully, your Timothy becomes somebody else's Paul someday, right? And they outgrow you. Hopefully, you outgrow your Paul and have to get a new one. Those positions change. But we should consistently be seeking those positions out. We should always have a spiritual leader. We should always have somebody we're poured into. We should always have a friend, a
Yeah.
men's group, something that people that you can go to that is judgment free and be like, hey, guys, I need you right now. I just need somebody in my corner. I just need somebody to be praying. And to have those people, that is crucial to our success. You will never, let me put it this way, Satan's greatest tool, right? We know that he's a liar. Greatest thing that he's ever deceived us of is to think that we're alone in a fight.
Yeah.
And
100%.
that's, yeah. And he does it to all of us, right? But it's not true. We are not alone in a fight. God has surrounded us with people, right? He has surrounded us with people to lift us up. He's given us pastors, he's given us mentors, he's given us friends, he's given us, younger people for us to pour into. And to do that, be in your word, right? It is another thing that be a student of the word, right? And whenever I say a student of the word, I have a friend of mine. He's like a PhD guy, right? And he reads a chapter of the Old Testament, chapter of the New Testament, chapter of Proverbs, or chapter of Psalms every day, right? I don't work that way. I'm a community college dropout from Southeast Missouri, right? And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's not about the quantity. It's about the quality, right? I'll read 3 or 4 verses and I will dissect them. I have become a student of the word. It may take me, you know, 6 times as long to go through the Bible as what it does him, but it doesn't matter, right? I am consistently striving to grow closer to Jesus,
Hmm.
right? To be better tomorrow than I was today. That should always be on our minds, right? And the only way you're going to do that is to be a student of the word, right? So, and the reason why I say it that way, because a lot of times whenever I say, get in your word. People think about, oh, well, I need to read a chapter a day, or I need, read the Bible in a year, or no, that's not it. It's all about what is best for you. What can you do? If you can read a chapter a day and that's how you're doing your best to get into word, then that's fine. Right. But I also don't want people to be overwhelmed, men to be overwhelmed, to be like, I can't, I'll never
Yeah.
retain all of that. Right.
They're like, I'm already working 10 hours a day, got a family, and you want me to
Exactly.
read for 3 hours the word? Like, what am I waking up at 4? Like, what am I doing here?
Exactly. Just make it part of your day, and make it start it with your day, right?
Yeah.
That's crucial, because it's like getting a song stuck in your head, right? If you're on your way to work or whatever, you're playing radio and you get the song stuck in your head. If you start your morning off with it, right? You can maul on it and chew on it all day. And sometimes I've had the greatest revelations where I've read a verse and I thought, I have no idea what the heck I just read, right? I have no idea what's going on here. And I just think about it all day. And then all of a sudden it was like, boom,
It hits you.
I got it, right? I got it.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 verses.
And that's what I found for me healing, going back to the healing process, right?
Mhm.
When I had the word in me, it like just came alive and it started to talk to me when all these insecurities and all these pains started to come about, man. So I love that you were talking about that, like being a student of the word.
Yes.
Anthony, as we wrap up here, people can tell you're passionate, you're excited about this, topic and stuff like that. What's the best way to reach out to you to get more insight and learn from you?
Yeah, man. We have so much, right? So obviously our website framework, or our website is romanministries.us.
Yeah.
I have a book out called Framework for Biblical Masculinity. There's a link on the website, or you can go to Amazon. You just type in the book or my name. We have a Facebook group. We have a private Facebook group called Roman Ministries Becoming a Spiritual Leader, where we are consistently trying to disciple men to becoming godly men, right? You can become a part of that. You can just hit me up on Facebook, Roman Ministries. You just holler at us. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on X. I always want to call it Twitter. X. We're on all those things, right? You can reach out to us anywhere, and I would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, if anybody needs any guidance, right? We're all in the same fight. We're all trying to become the leaders God has called us to be. Become the husbands, the fathers that God has called us to be, to encourage the people around us. And that is our mission as Roman Ministries, is to help men become those spiritual leaders that God has called them to be.
I love it, man. And Anthony, thank you so much for pouring into men, right? Because not a lot of people want to do that. They just forget, or they're just too scared. And you decided to step into the chaos, the fear, and said, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to help men deal with their struggles and become real men, right? Real men who want to love God and love the people around them. So thank you, man. It's always great to meet a brother in arms who's trying to fight the same fight with, so kind of like you were saying, like sometimes we can feel alone. It's like, no, the more we have men around us fighting that fight, the better we are.
That's exactly right.
So thank you, man. Thank you. You're doing that. And I can't wait till one day for us to connect, man, in person and
Yes.
have some fun. But for those of you, again, reach out to him, Real Men's Ministries. I'll put all that in the show notes for all of you who are listening, and be encouraged by what Anthony's been talking about. The reality that, like, you may feel like your marriage is in shambles. You may feel like you're hiding this sin. There may be wounds in your past. Like, none of those things are too far from God to redeem. So if you're listening to this, reach out to Anthony, reach out to me, reach out to whoever, and start working through the healing process. Because I guarantee you, God can redeem you and God can transform everything. And you can look at this on the other side of the fence and be like, wow, I almost lost it. And I knew what God meant for evil. What not God meant for evil, what man meant for evil, God made for good. And that's the beauty of what we're talking about here. So Anthony, thank you again so much for your time here. And for those of you who are listening, I'll see you back next week. And until then, remember to kill shame, stand strong, and be on mission. Hope you guys have a great day, and God bless. Thanks for joining us today. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Remember, killing shame isn't just about breaking free from the past. It's about walking boldly into the future God has for you.